Welcome to our workshop on building detections in AWS. I'm very excited to be here. My name's Sean McCullough. I am one of the authors for Security 541, which is our cloud threat detection class. The author of this workshop and also my co-author for the class is Ryan Nicholson. And if you like this workshop, this is kind of the feel that we've built a lot of our Security 541 class around. A couple things that we want to make sure we get out of the way. First of all, hello, everybody. We are in Discord for chat. If you have questions, you need help with something, so please hop over to Discord. And just so I make sure that I know that I'm on and I'm live and y'all can hear me, anybody, can y'all say hi in Discord if you are on and listening? I know Vincent, we were talking to earlier. Hey, Vincent, anybody else on Discord? All right, a couple more people. Good. You had me worried. I was wondering if maybe it was just me and Vincent hanging out today, which would be fine. That's the way it is. Maxine, Melinda, hello. And there's CH. Okay, so some of you can hear me. Great. Welcome. So we have a link to our Discord channel and the channel, our Discord group, and the channel is workshop discussion. So that's the great place for you to interact. And during like the break lab time where you're working on your workshop, you can ask questions or we can have general discussions. It doesn't just have to be about the workshop. The way this workshop is laid out is that I'm going to talk and introduce a section. We'll go through a few slides, discuss what it is, and then I'm going to turn you loose to do part of the workshop. And there's like, I think 5 different times where you'll go and you'll work inside of your own lab that you have set up. Now, that means you need an AWS account. There is, we can put the AWS link information. When you got an email, when you signed up, it says, hey, welcome. This is the information about the workshop. It has a link in there for you're getting yourself an AWS account. You will need an AWS account that you have full access to, which means if you have a corporate account that you're using, you may have things turned off or blocked from you, and that might impede you. The stuff we're going to be doing today is part of the free tier, so it's really not going to cost you anything at all. If you leave it on, it may cost you a couple bucks. But, you know, just using the lab today, and then you can tear it down if you feel like it. And we've got some great links in there for that. And it's funny because my my Discord is saying that's L. L put that in there, but I think that's Laura. Okay. All right. So Discord channel is the place to come chat. Make sure you have your AWS account. We're going to need it just a few minutes to do our spin up. Everything else from this lab, all the code that you need and everything is available free online, and you'll be getting it free online to go and interact with it. So if you decide that you want to do this lab tomorrow or next week, or you want to do it with your people in your company or your friends, I guess, which I guess may be weird, but anyways, you could do that. The information is all there, and you're welcome to go and play with it. All right. I think that's it. That's it of the boring stuff. Let's go into the workshop. So just a breakdown of what we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking about kind of our process for doing detection and building. So the idea is, hey, I think I want to detect something. I need to be able to figure out how to detect it and ensure that that thing is detectable in my environment. Everyone's environment is very different. So what works in my environment may not work in your environment, vice versa. So we always have to kind of tailor these a little bit. So we'll obviously be working in a brand new environment. But I think what we're going to be doing today will be very useful in just about any environment, and we'll talk about that. First thing we're going to do is have an exercise where we're going to deploy the infrastructure. Then we're going to be talking about API event logging, and then you're going to run an attack on your environment itself. Now, that's one of the reasons why you probably don't want to be using your production account from your company, is because we are going to be running attacks against them. Then we're going to detect that attack, and then we're going to build some automations so that, you know, if this happens again, we can automatically respond. We'll close it out, and then we'll show you how to tear down your environment. All right? Sound good? Yeah? All right. Hopefully that sounds good, because that's what we're doing. Okay. So I mentioned this before. You're going to be make sure that you're not using your production environment unless you have an environment that allows you to do this. You can set up the AWS sandbox pretty quickly. All you just need is your credit card, and we have the link there. Okay. So what's our overall process for how we're going to kind of do this detection building? Now, we're not just going to give you like, hey, detect this particular attack. I mean, there's lots of ways to do that. But what we want to do is go through this process of what should I detect and how am I going to detect it? And is it actually working in my environment? And then if this is something that is always should be detected, I probably want to do something beyond that. I don't want to just get a log. I want to do something with that information. So there's a process we got to kind of follow. So we're going to start up with this researching the attack technique. What is the thing we want to attack? How likely is that to happen in my environment? That's a big one. Some of you have environments where an SSH brute force attack is not going to happen because you don't have SSH turned on. Some of you have an environment where you've got virtual machines all over the internet connected with SSH and you're using username passwords. So brute force attack might be successful in your environment. They're always going to be really different. So research those attack techniques. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our logging is set up properly. What do I need to turn on? Do I have the data in the right location? Is the data normalized properly so I can analyze it? So if I've got a bunch of data being dropped into an S3 bucket or a storage account and no one's ever looking at it, it's not really that useful, right? So making sure I got my logging set up properly and it's in the place where I can make use of it. Then what we want to do is we want to actually implement some kind of attack against a realistic resources to ensure, to test, and make sure that a logging is set up. This is real important, not just from a detection standpoint, but really anything in a cloud. I talked to a lot of folks who set something up and they're like, oh yeah, we've got logging turned on. And I'm like, how do you know? How do you know you've got to? And they go and look and they go, oh, we missed some stuff, right? So being able to constantly test this and making sure that our detections work is really important. We're then going to review our log data. And then what we're going to do is build our detection. And then from building the detection in the cloud, since everything can be automated, there's a lot of things I can do in that environment. All right. All right. So let's go to the next slide. So what we're going to be looking at is one particular attack. Now, when we first started teaching this class, we would always start off with, hey, who's using MITRE ATT&CK? And like a couple of people would raise their hand. And now when we ask it, almost everyone raises their hand. So most people are using MITRE ATT&CK somehow in their environment. But for those of you who maybe are not familiar with it, MITRE ATT&CK is a framework that really does a great job of describing and categorizing complex attacks. So the categorization, I think, is the most important part of it. I can say, hey, MITRE ATT&CK technique T1530. You can go look it up and you can see what is the attack, how does it work, what kind of access does the attacker need in order to do that. You can get some information about how you would defend it and how you would detect it, but they're very broad. They're not detailed enough, in my opinion, but they are available. They're there. So what we want to do is we want to detect this particular attack, which is T1530. Someone is doing something with sensitive data in my environment. Okay, a couple of things we need to know of. Where's my sensitive data? Might be the first one. If you work in an environment where a lot of people are, a lot of teams are just deploying their own stuff and there's really no management over putting, sensitive data in a certain location, it might be hard to tell where our production data is. We might have actually production data or sensitive data in the wrong location. So, hey, it's not supposed to be in the web server, but it is, right? So those kind of problems. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an experiment where we're going to have a file that looks like it's a bad file, but it's not. So we would put this in production system somewhere. It would look like it was part of the production system, but no one is actually going to use it unless an attacker finds it. And so we call that a honey file. You've probably heard of honey pots and honey networks, and there's all kinds of honeys. This is a particular file. Honey token is like a general one. But anyways, this is a file, a specific file that we're going to drop in our environment. And then we're going to hyper focus on it. Anybody who touches this file, I want to know about it. And I want to go ask some questions, right? It might be, it might be on accident. It might be an attacker, but we want to go focus on it. All right. So how are we going to do this? We're going to deploy our honey file into a resource inside of our AWS account. Now, we're pretending like this is a production environment that we're going to be using right now. This is just for us to test these things out. But you might want to put this in like a production system or maybe its own storage account in a production system. We're going to turn on our logging. And then we're going to perform an attack, which is looking at the file, pulling it. We're going to look at our log data to ensure that we can see it. And then we're going to build an automation for it. So how are we actually going to do this? You are going to log into your AWS account, and you're going to use something called Cloud Shell. Both Azure and AWS, I think GCP too. I'm not a GCP person, so I don't quote me on that. But you can go in and click a button, and you will get a console. It will be assigned to some generic user, but it'll give you all the permissions that you have logging in. And we're going to use that Cloud Shell to build our environment, which is actually kind of cool. So we're going to pull that information down from this Blue Mountain Cyber, which is Ryan's GitHub repo. And then we're going to run some Terraform templates, use some Terraform templates to build some infrastructure. One of the things that we're going to build is we're going to build a S3 bucket that's going to be called data backup. We're going to drop our file in that bucket. We're going to deploy a Lambda function that's going to do some automation when we get to that section. And we're going to turn on Security Hub, which is an Amazon security product that allows us to pull a whole bunch of alerts together from different systems and manage them. We can also send it our own generic custom alerts. So we'll be using Security Hub for that collection part. I don't want to, it's not a SIM. I don't know what you would call it, but it's a place where we can collect alerts. It's not really a SIM, but okay. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to this web address that's on the page here, building-detections-aws.sanscloudwars.com. That is going to drop you into a workbook. And let me pull my workbook up just so I can show you what it looks like, so you know you've made it when you're there. Don't worry, I didn't freeze. I'm just looking for it. There we go. So you're going to run and you're going to get to this page. And this is a workbook that we have running in the cloud. And you're going to go down here and there's exercise 1. So you click exercise 1. And then we have a step-by-step. If you've done a SANS class, this looks familiar. But for those of you who haven't, you're going to go step-by-step. Now, one thing we've done is we've said, hey, some of you know some of this stuff really well. Other users are just learning. So we have the solutions. And usually the solutions are in this drop-down box. So you can open up and we can give you very detailed step-by-step instructions of exactly how to get to Cloud Shell. All right. And then here's how you would, and you can read it. I don't want to read it for you because I don't want to insult your intelligence, but that is going to be the workshop. And what you're going to do is you're going to start running a script to build it. And once you've run the script, it'll work. It always does. Now I shouldn't have said that now, right? Now I've jinxed myself, but you're going to run that workshop. It's going to take about 15 minutes. After 15 minutes is over, I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk a little bit about what we did. Not too much because it's just building an infrastructure. It's not that exciting. And then we'll move on to the next section. All right. If you have any questions, let us know in the workshop discussion group. If you do not have an account, this is a good time to set up the account. If you are behind, if you don't get finished in 15 minutes, no worries. The website and everything is going to be up for a while. So you don't have to finish it all within the 2 hours. You have plenty of time to do it. You have, I don't want to say forever. You have weeks, months, I don't know. You have a long time to do it. So, all right, I will see you in 15 minutes. All right, we are back. Hey, I was saying I had to find my mouse. All right. All right, so hopefully we have our infrastructure stood up. If there's any questions or had issues, please let us know in the chat for the Discord. This is usually we just run a script and it builds. A couple things about the script. We're writing this in CloudFormation, and we are writing it in CloudFormation because well, let me just show you why talk about it when I can just show us. So we're gonna go right here. Oh, hold on, let me get all this junk out of the way. All right. So one of the things, the first things we did on this particular lab, let me get to the right page because I was going ahead. I know. So well, oh, you know what? I didn't mention this before. Let me mention it here. In the workshop right here, there's like, this is in gray. This is what we want you to run. If you go over here on the right hand side, just click it, it copies it, right? So I can just click that once, copy it, and then go over here, right click, paste it. Boom. Pretty simple. I can just do that. And then I did my git clone. And then I did the ls. I already did the git clone, right? And so I can just copy and paste, and I can see in here that I've got this scripts file. And in that scripts file, oh, and there's a honey file. Let's see. That is going to be created with the build. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go and look in the build real quick. So cd scripts, cd, build, yep. cd scripts. All right, and there's cat build. All right, we'll do less. So super simple script. All it really does is, well, first thing it does is it deploys CloudFormation. That's what it does. Now, CloudFormation is Amazon's kind of native way of doing infrastructure as a cloud. There is a long YAML file that describes everything we want it to build. And then we say, hey, YAML file, I'm going to give you to CloudFormation and Amazon is going to do all the hard work. Okay. Another option that people use is Terraform. That is, can be used across multiple cloud vendors. I can write Terraform for AWS. I can also write Terraform for Azure. People used to say, oh, you can write it once and deploy it everywhere. But honestly, that only worked when we just cared about VMs. Most of the time we are using custom Terraform for our different environments because there's so many, specific resources in each one. But the point is, I'm going to use Terraform. And the reason we use Terraform here, the reason we use CloudFormation here is because it's built in and easily accessible through the API. I don't have to do any other downloading of Terraform in this Cloud Shell. Remember, this Cloud Shell is going to last for a little while. It's supposed to kind of go away. It's ephemeral environment. I didn't have to set up any virtual machines to do this. If I do Cloud Shell in Azure, it's a little bit different. It's going to create or make use of a storage account in our environment, and it's going to put in the files section there of that storage account. It's going to create a new container for files, and that's actually where it's going to be. So it stores the data a little bit longer, but it can be a little bit messier for management. So, so you just got to keep that in mind. I love Cloud Shell. I think it's a great option, especially in AWS. In a production environment, I find that in Azure, it creates too many like residual storage accounts that just hanging out that people aren't really actively managing. All right, I have a question for the Discord channel, just so I can kind of understand where we're at on environments. How many people are using AWS, or if you're using Azure, or both? Or if you're not, you're using something else, let me know. I'd be interested. Let us know what you're using. Z's using AWS. AWS and GCP. Very interesting. I like that. I see more and more of that. AWS for now, still learning Azure. Yeah, it's a little bit different. Both. T's using both. All right. So a little bit mix. Anybody using Oracle Cloud? I will say the two ways in which I hear people use Oracle Cloud is, one, they already had a long-term Oracle contract, and so they get some resources for that. JG is using it. Also, Oracle has a lot of more free compute resources at the entry level for your account. So I had one student who used Oracle strictly for free compute. They didn't really, that's what they use. So, so that's interesting. All right. So GCP, nice. All right. Great. Okay. It's a good mixture of it. On containers. H is not really sure who knows what else you're using. Yeah, I know. That's the whole problem with the hidden IT, right? Anybody with a credit card can displace a Cloudflare as your cloud environment. Oh, interesting. Okay. Everyone's got a cloud nowadays. All right. Very interesting. So that's great. So, yeah. So, a little bit different. Like some people say AWS and Azure have some similarities at the very base level, but they do kind of, diverge in their goal and their purpose of how things are deployed. So something to think in mind. Just for, I guess for disclosure, my day job is with GitHub, which is owned by Azure. But before I worked for GitHub, I did a lot of AWS. And so I've spent a fair amount of time with both. And I always feel like you really understand your cloud environment when you break stuff, right? So that's, and then you fix it, not just break and leave. But, one time when I was an intern in college, I broke something and didn't know it. And I went to lunch, and then I came back and the whole office was going nuts because the network was down, and I realized it was my fault. So, so I say when you break stuff, but you break and then fix it, then you learn a lot. Okay. That's a side note. All right. So hopefully you ran that. You built it. Oh, I didn't show this. The other thing is that was built was this file. So we have this file right here. And then what we did is we uploaded the file to the newly created bucket. All right. So AWS for I'm saying you understand for your professional. Yes, I thought you were saying AWS is for professionals. That's what I thought you were saying. So good. And your name is administrator. Are you really the administrator? All right. Okay. All right. So that is our lab. So we've built our infrastructure. We'll just go and look to double check to make sure everything's working. Also give you time if you're still working on it. You're going to go to your S3 environment. And you should be able to see 2 buckets. Now I'm going to have more because I've got some other stuff going on, but you're going to have one called data backup with some kind of number, which should be your ID, and then cloud lock. So data backup is where we're going to store our file. So if I go in here, I see I have a password -backup.txt. This is my honey file. It's not really a password file. Now let's be honest. Anybody here a red team or a blue team or something where you go in and do an evaluation environment? Do you find password.txt files? You don't have to answer. That's kind of a rhetorical question because yes, they are there. Sometimes it's not TXT. Sometimes it's an Excel file, but there are quite often there. Or they've posted it behind them and they go on camera. That's another thing. All right. So we've built our infrastructure. We've had it up and let's take a look. All right. I'm going to ask another spicy question when we get to the next group. It's probably going to be like, which infrastructure service do you like the best? Terraform or CloudFormation? So I'm interested in that. Okay. All right. So we've created our honey file, right? And so now what we want to do is our whole goal is to try and identify if somebody is grabbing that file. That's our honey file. Great thing about a honey file. I can put hyper focus on a particular resource and put all my logging on that resource. Would I want to monitor every file in my environment? Probably not. I might want to have a record of it, but I may not want to alert on all of it. So being able to put these honey files, these honey systems, whatever it is, out there and hyper focus on it, hopefully is attracting people that are coming into the environment. Fun fact, one of the other 541 instructors who's in Germany, Alex. So if you're ever overseas and you do a SANS class for us, he's usually instructor. He's really big on this detection engineering and deception engineering. So he has some really great stories about how he's done that. So a couple of things to note that we have some way. So there was a question on Zoom. Let's see. Oh, there was a quick, which do I prefer? I guess I should have said which I prefer. Yes, thank you. Okay, I have to take a little side trip. I don't like Terraform. I'm a software developer by heart. That's kind of how I started. And Terraform just feels not quite like a language. CloudFormation also does not feel like language. It's very complicated and hard to update. Amazon has has a library called CDK, which allows you to write Python or JSON or JavaScript or something like that to build CloudFormation. And that is my preference, but that's just me. I like to, when I do my automations in my cloud deployments, I like to have a lot of logic and stuff. And I also like a lot of tests, and I can do that easier. But, and a lot of people say they like Pulumi too, but I haven't found a lot of organizations that are using it in mass. A lot of people are using Terraform because that allows you to work across multiple clouds. But I love CDK. And if you love CDK, we're best friends. Okay. I work for Google, GitHub, and we are all Terraform. So I've learned Terraform. And SANS is all Terraform. So I have to always do Terraform for SANS. Great question. Thank you for asking that. And if you, I will let you know, I've got the screen up for Discord. So if you ask a question in Discord, I'm monitoring it all the time. So that's a little bit easier than Zoom. So you can hit me up in the Discord, in the main channel. All right. So we've deployed our honey token and we've got our, minor infrastructure up. If we had a huge infrastructure, it'd be hard for me to just go pick a file, but I can mix it in with a whole bunch of different things and it's just hidden right in there, right? So now we're going to turn on logging. In Amazon, our main logging service is called CloudTrail. CloudTrail allows me primarily to bring in API logs. And so when I say API logs, that means, hey, I've created something, I've deleted something, I've built something, I have changed the infrastructure somehow. That's all tracked in my API logs. If I say, what are all the names of all of my buckets, that is also in CloudTrail. But if I say, hey, I want to log every time someone grabs a file, that is not inherently in CloudTrail. I actually have to take a step further, and I have to tell CloudTrail, hey, I want you to go and grab all of those activities through the objects in my bucket and also put those in CloudTrail. So that is what you're going to do. You're going to create a CloudTrail trail. I am sorry about the naming of AWS. It's very weird. AWS names stuff weird and just leaves it forever, like Neptune. And then Microsoft names things and then changes the names. So it's just the way that they work. You're going to go and create a CloudTrail that's going to log all your events. And that is all we're going to do for this next section. This is a 15-minute to go and grab those API logs to do a double check. If you have questions or problems with labs, please reach out in the workshop dash discussions. We'll thread it and have a conversation. And we will, I can help answer those. All right. I will see you in 15 minutes. All right. We are back. I did just get a question from Jay ... Let me, I'm not sure exactly where you got the error, so we might have to tackle that at the next run. But let me just show you what we're doing here in CloudTrail. So just to kind of get the basics on it, CloudTrail is the service that gives you access to your API logs, and also we're going to show here our data logs from S3 buckets, right? So that's the resource. I can go in and it's collecting API logs all the time, and it stores it for 90 days. If I want to customize something and I want to store it someplace else, I'm going to have to send it through what's called a trail. So what we did is we created a trail and we gave it a name, and then we wanted to send the data to a particular bucket, not creating a new one. And so we picked our cloud logs bucket. I did this wrong earlier and I was so confused. And then what it's going to do is it's just going to kind of do the basics, but we don't really want to do the basics. We want to do the advanced. Where's the advanced? I always do this through the command line. Okay, so test. Okay, so here. So Jay, I think this is where you got to the issue. What we want to do is we want the management events. This is the API calls like create, delete, all that. We also want data events. So this will be interacting with the objects in the S3 bucket. We don't want insight events. So insight events is Amazon looking at your logs and saying, oh, that looks weird. I'm going to let you know that this looks weird. So it's some kind of machine learning and all this kind of statistical analysis. We're not turning that on. Primarily, I see insight events being used for operational issues. This virtual machine is running really hot. This storage account is getting full, like that kind of stuff. I haven't seen it being used for security as much. All right. So then what we did is we said, we turned that on. We want our management events, our data events. Now we're switching. Here's why we're switching. Because when the environment, would insight be useful for insider threat? No, I don't think that the insights would be helpful for insider threat. I don't see detections in there that would help you look for those kind of activities. It's just guard duty. Turn that on. Guard duty would be the one that you would want to use. Most environments are so wonky that Amazon has a hard time telling you that something's going on from that particular pace. So I don't recommend turning on insight. Well, you can. I mean, it might be good for other things. If you can help operations and at the same time help your security team, that's even better. So maybe turn on insights to help them. But okay, so then so what you're gonna do is you're gonna have this API activity, and then we're gonna switch to basic here. And what we're gonna do is we do want the S3 bucket. You can also get Lambda. Oh, Dynamo. I feel like that's newer. So we only want the S3 buckets here. We're going to turn off read and write. for all current and future. Now, I recommend that when you do this in your production environment, I think you should turn on logging for all your S3 buckets, all of them, and just send them through CloudTrail, or create a separate trail just for the data objects. It's probably easier to do. And the reason is because if you decide I don't need it only for these 3 buckets, and you get attacked and someone gets into your environment, which let's assume they will, and they start looking through your S3 buckets, you won't know what they did. You won't know what they saw, what they got. Whenever you see someone post that, hey, we got attacked, but we have no indication that they got access to our data, that might indicate that they didn't turn logging on, the way they phrase that, right? Or we can say they didn't get to our data. That's different. But if you don't have the data, you're not going to know. And so it's so easy just to turn on for everybody. I just recommend doing that. And it is a lot of data, but you don't have to put it into your SIM. You could store it somewhere else and call it if you really need to. But for this lab, we're only going to do for 1 bucket, and we're creating this trail as kind of like this trail is very much for a honey token. So this might be something we just do for our honey token. So I'm only going to pull from the particular bucket that I care about, which is the data backups. And then I'm going to say yes. And then we add it. So that's what we do. For Jay, I'm not sure where you're getting the error if you want to post the screenshot, but that's the process. So double check and make sure you clicked everything as the screen shows you. Because like in here, we have if you open it up right here, we show you step by step. So just make sure you followed it. So it sounds like maybe something you did wrong. The other thing that might be happening. Oh, wait a minute. What happened there? Oh, yeah. With some of you is if you are using your corporate account, you may not be allowed to turn on CloudTrail. You might have too many. You can only have 5, or they may not allow you to do it. So that's one of the reasons why we say don't do that. T asks, do you prefer S3 data events over S3 access logs? S3 access logs are great if your S3 bucket looks like a web server and has anonymous access. So people are hitting it. They don't have to log into AWS in order to hit that S3 bucket. So that's how I would recommend. So I would turn S3 access logs for that. But you have to turn that on for every single, for specific buckets. It's easier for me to say in AWS, I have multiple accounts and I manage them all through organizations. I can go to my top level and I can say, turn on CloudTrail in every region and collect all the S3 buckets. Boom. And I can do it in one place. So that's how I recommend doing it. So that's S3 data events. Question, is there a way to implement data log analytics with AWS before data is sent to the S3 buckets? No, there is not. There is not. So wait a minute. Is there a way to implement data log? So I'm going to interpret what I think you're saying is there a way to determine which data you want sent to being logged? I think so. So that's what I think you're saying, Willio. No, there's not. You can determine if you want reads or writes, but storing the log in your S3 bucket is really not that expensive. It's really super cheap. Your cost is when you pull that into your SIM. And so you might want to only bring in certain things from your SIM. So I may not want all my logs. I would say if you're worried about cost, don't bring your data. Don't bring these S3 access logs into your SIM. Just keep them in S3 and then turn on Athena or something else, which is a different lab. Why AWS does not turn on CloudTrail for each and every S3 bucket on by default? It's just a cost thing. It's because it's a lot of data some people don't really want. Actually, CloudTrail is only collecting management APIs by default. So it's much lower information. It's very high fidelity. A lot of people, that's where your first place to go for detection. And so that's on by default, but storing data anywhere is going to incur additional cost. And so you have to determine what there's. Yeah. So run Lambda before you drop it into your bucket. So and then Jay's question. Permission to perform this action administrator. Oh, so It looks like you have, I'm going to say that you do not have an account that. So Jay, it looks like you do not have your own account. Maybe you're using a company account or something like that. That is the reason why you would not be able to turn this on. That error looks like that you've been blocked from being able to turn on data access logs. Yeah. The problem with the way Amazon does their policies is that they don't really, it doesn't give you a lot of information about why you've been denied. But when it says your administrator, that looks like. The other thing is, if you just created this account, maybe they haven't fully processed your credit card. That would be the other one. Your credit card's not processed all the way, so they're not letting you incur a ton of money. Those are two things I can think of. Sorry. So there's a question. No, it's not root versus IM login. Unless your IN is not admin. I'm logging in as an admin, an IM that has full access, and so I should be able, I'm able to do it. So it's something with your account. There was a question from Zoom. Will not that be costlier? I know that intrusions is even costlier. I think that was, I'm not sure where that came from in the questions, but I'm guessing you're saying it doesn't cost a lot to turn on the S3 access logs. I'm sorry, the S3 data logs. And so, yeah, I'm sorry. There's a couple questions coming in. Yeah, so it's not a whole lot of cost to drop stuff into an S3 bucket unless you leave it on for a long time. And it can incur costs over years. So think about that. If I'm collecting everything from every log and I store it forever, I might be spending $1,000 a year, a month after a while. You just got to kind of manage your logs. So that would be the only thing. Let me ask you this, because we kind of talked about SIMs, and that was my next question in this, is which SIM are you using? Maybe not you, but your team or your company. Which SIM do y'all use? And if you like it, let us know. I'd be interested. We use Splunk, and we're using a little more and more Azure's Data Explorer and those kind of services, which I'm actually liking a lot. I'm not a super Splunk person. Like, I'm not in love with it, but oh, so T's using Sentinel, so you're using some Azure products. I'm seeing that more and more. Matt's using Panther. I'm not familiar. What company makes Panther? QRadar, yeah. All right. No, I haven't seen Elasticsearch. Surprised. It usually comes in. What's Panther? Oh, okay. All right. Oh, interesting. All right. I'm not familiar with that, so that's new. All right. Thinking about moving to Elasticsearch. Oof. Elasticsearch is a lot of work. I mean, you have to be ready up front to do a lot of management, and then Splunk costs a lot. So I mean, it's it's dependent on how you like things to do things. It's funny because GitHub, like, even though even the people who are not developers are developers, like everyone's kind of like a developer, so we customize everything like a lot, like sometimes maybe too much. But we have customizations running on Splunk, which makes it hard. If we ever decide we want to leave Splunk, it makes it hard. Okay. So, all right, cool. So I'll have to check out that Panther. So, so let's look at the next section. We're going to talk about how we're going to attack. Now, the attack is just us pulling down the file, right? That's all we're doing. We're generating access to a honey token. So we need to interact with the honey token. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull the file. So one thing to see is, so if I look up here, the list buckets, give me the name of all the buckets. Okay, you're going to run that command. That is actually being stored in the API log. So you get that for free through CloudTrail. You don't have to do anything for that. Once I get the name of the buckets, I have a particular bucket that the attacker is interested in, the data backups. Folks, if you have backup files, if you have backup AMIs, if you back up your EC2s, you might have sensitive data in those backups, and you aren't monitoring it and watching them like you're watching everything else. If someone gets access to the environment and they're able to spin up or take a look at a backup file, they may get credentials. And if you have long-lived credentials, they may be able to use those credentials. Let me just say that off the bat. So going in and seeing the backup storage account, attacker is going to go and look in that. All right. So there was a question. Both are logged in the CloudTrail management logs. So I'm not really sure what that was referred to. So we'll go. All right. So getting a list and name all the buckets, that is for free. But going and getting the name and the value of an object, that has to be turned on with the data access. So that is our S3 access logs that we turned on, or I'm sorry, our S3 data logs that we turned on, and we're going to be able to see that somebody has done that. All right. So those are the two attacks that we're going to do. All right. That brings us to our next one, where we are going to attack the environment. Now hopefully we've given it some time for our CloudTrail to start operating and running. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go pull the files and get prepped for the next section. So that is a 10-minute. Yeah. So we're on 10 minutes. And if there's any questions, let me know. There were a bunch of questions coming in, and I may have threaded them improperly. So please restate your question or let me know if I did not answer it properly. All right. See you in 10 minutes. All right. We're back. Let me get my blinker out of here. All right. So now we've gone and we have listed the information, or listed our buckets. So let me get that. So our attack is just querying that particular file and looking for that bucket. One of the things I want to point out, just in the way we've done this lab, so you can kind of understand how these labs kind of work. A lot of this thing, we don't know the name of your bucket, right? Because every bucket in the world has to be completely unique. So you've had some randomly generated thing that you've used for their bucket. And so in this workshop and in our lab, so we do this for a class, we do a lot of this command line where we go and we pull the information. Now, you could go through and look at your buckets. So here, let me pull it up. I could go in and I can look at my buckets. So I'll do, oh, wait a minute. Is this still on? I didn't delete this. Hold on a second. I'm getting like twice as much data as I'm supposed to. Okay. So now I'm wondering what the next group will look like. All right. So I'm going to look at S3 buckets. So I could go into my S3 buckets and I could, let me get rid of that guy. And then I could go and look for the bucket name and I can copy and paste and do all that. So I could do that. It's not a problem. But I only have like a handful of buckets. How many do you have in your account? 100, 1,000? Probably hundreds in your production accounts. And they're all named all kinds of different things because they have to be unique. So we rely on using the command line in the class to help us figure out the names of things. One of the reasons why we use command line in our class in these kind of labs rather than just using the GUI is because the GUI lies to us about the infrastructure and the data behind it. So we might see an object and we can see on the page that it has like all these different things that has part of it. But then in real life, you're actually looking at 3 different resource objects. And we have found that that kind of fake GUI messes with our ability to write queries, because we actually have to know what the data looks like in the logs. And so we actually need to know how the creations, deletions really work, what their API calls are, what the objects that are part of it, so that we can write the queries for it. So we found that doing things through a command line is a much better way of learning about the infrastructure and resources underneath the cloud environment. So when we do our labs, we do a lot of GUI, and that's really why. All right, let me get this out of the way. So that's why we kind of run these commands like this, where we say, all right, go and well, I'm just gonna pull this up. Go and get the name of your bucket. We know it's going to start with cloud logs dash. Another thing we could have used to trigger off of this, which is what I would do in a real production environment, is we may use CloudTrail to spin this up. And so in CloudTrail, I had the security CloudTrail. No, not CloudTrail. Sorry, CloudFormation. They all have too many names that start with cloud. It's just for confusing. All right, CloudFormation, and I have this stack called building detections. And in this stack, I have these resources right here that have been created. And one of them is an S3 bucket. And I can go and look at the S3 bucket. And if we did, I should have checked this beforehand with the logs with tags. Yes. So in the tags, it's actually tagged with the name of the CloudFormation stack. So what I could do is I could know, well, all of our security detections are deployed with this name CloudFormation, and I might deploy it all over the place maybe. I can go and ask Amazon, hey, give me the name of all the buckets where it has a particular tag, and CloudFormation does that for me. I can do the same thing with Terraform. In Terraform, I can say, and I recommend doing this, when I launch and I have a provider, I can specify everything that's been created by Terraform or managed by Terraform, tag it with some value. So I know how I got to put, and I can use that as my querying. And then I can have 1,000 things called CloudWatch or CloudTrail logs, and I'll know which specific ones I want from the way it was built. I think that's the better way of doing it. All right. Excuse me. So we went in, and there's some good discussion. Hold on one second. I got so choked up because I love the cloud so much. All right. There was a good discussion with G and Maxine on about like kind of how you would get these datas off into your SIM, which is something we're not really talking too much about, but I love the fact that you're having the conversation in the discussion here. I always love it when people go off on tangents and they're like, hey, how do you do this and do that? So I love it. So I'm gonna ask a spicy question. Now my boss says spicy a lot for questions, but this is not, hopefully it's not too spicy, but I don't want to be like a really big, like detailed discussion. I don't want people pointing fingers, but I would like for you to tell me in a word or two what your feelings are about all of this AI coming into our cloud environments for security. So we have Copilot. Microsoft just announced a bunch of stuff yesterday and today, I think, with all these new Copilot AI stuff being built into security environment. Of course, I work for GitHub and we have our Copilot for coding. So I've been using that. I like it. My feelings are hopeful. ChatGPT is interesting, but some of these more specific ones seem to work really better. So I'm excited about it, but I'm interested in what you all think about it. There's no right or wrong, just how you're feeling. All right. So while we fill those out, I see a lot of people typing. I was like, hey, what's your feeling? I was thinking one word, but some of you are like really typing. So now I'm interested in what's coming out. Well, we're going to see in a second. All right. So we've done our attack of our cloud environment. And so now let's take a look at kind of what the data should look like. In CloudTrail, it is going to create these logs, and these logs are going to have a bunch of CloudTrail information inside of it, and then it's going to be zipped up in groups. And I think they're by like every minute or something like that. I don't remember exactly what they are for CloudTrail, but it's going to grab a whole bunch of logs together, zip them up, drop them into our S3 bucket. One of the things that was the conversation about whether you should send your logs to S3 before you send it to your SIM, or whether you send it to CloudWatch before you send it to SIM. We're not doing a lot of CloudWatch today, but if you drop it into your S3 bucket, it's 10 times cheaper, but whatever pulls it and pushes it to your SIM has to explode the file and do the files one at a time. And so the coding is a little bit more complicated. And also if there's a failure, it's a little more complicated to figure out how to restart. You can send it to CloudWatch, which is, I think, easier, but it's like 10 times the cost. So just kind of think about that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and grab the logs. We don't have a SIM here. And we're not going to incur a bunch of costs with Athena and stuff. So since it's just a workshop, we're going to grab the logs, extract them, and then we're going to use our command line to parse the data to see interactions with our honey file. All right. So if you cloud native approach in AWS, you have two options. You could use Athena, or you could use Security Lake, which is like Athena. Just on like a more managed Athena. There's some costs in there, but we spend a long time in Amazon talking about that in our class. All right, so that's what you can do. You're going to explode the data, 15 minutes, and I'll see you in 15. All right, we are back. Let's take a quick look at that section. I don't want to belabor it too much, but because I know I will say this, we're going to go a little past our 2 hours. We just had so much great conversation. But if you have to break off early, no problem. The workshop will be available. You can go back and view the presentation and the slides. It takes about 2 days, maybe. It's usually faster, but some may not be. 2 days, and that should show up, and you can go and look at the web and catch up. And the files and everything that we've been working with are going to be around for a while, so no worries there. And Elle has put in the link to it. So, all right. So let's look at our detection the attack. Now, what we did basically is we said, hey, I don't have a SIM on me right now. So I'm going to go and grab these files out of CloudTrail. I know about the time that I can go and grab that data, like because I know when maybe the attack happens. I'm going to go grab that data and I'm going to flip through it. Now, there's going to be other ways to do that. We'll show you in the next lab how I might want to automate that. So one of the things that we did in this lab is we kind of like did a build. We were like, all right, so let's go and run a command. And the command is, let me do it clear. So the command is, hey, go and look in this directory for anything that has a .json.jz and just print out the data. And you can just see it's just a ton of data, right? So at least I know the data is there. Now, what we're going to do is we spend step by step trying to narrow down the specific types of data that we want. One of the reasons we do it like this in the lab, in this workshop, is so you can get a feel for how to do querying across data and how you can analyze JSONs, because you're going to be, when you look in Splunk, this is the log format the logs will be in. They'll be in this JSON format. So you're going to run the query in Splunk or whatever tool you're using, or Panther or whatever it is, in your own query language, but this is going to be the format of the data. And that's kind of what we really care about for this workshop. So I'm then going to take this and I'm going to, this is a little bit, I'll try to do a little bit differently next time, but now I'm going to use something called JQ, which is already built into Cloud Shell. And JQ is a JSON parser, and it does manipulation of the JSON. It can do a lot of stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use JQ, and this is not a JQ class. So I'm just kind of highlight it so that when you go back and you look at the lab, you can kind of understand what we're doing. I'm going to go select where my management events is equal to false. Management events are things like create an object, or I'm sorry, I should have said object, create a resource, delete a resource, get information about a resource being an S3 bucket, an IAM user, a virtual machine. I don't want those. I only want the ones that are data events. So those are things like get objects, delete object. And so I can see that, yes, I do have them. So I'm going to go and pull that apart a little bit more. I want to know where the request key is backup. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it here because I want to show you how we build it. I think it's a little bit easier here, because when I do it in the command, it just kind of goes fast. So I'm going to go get all my logs, and I want to say where the event name is get object, because I want to see where people pulled stuff. And the request parameter key is backup txt. And you can see, all right, we do have somebody getting this backup, or getting this password backup, which we know is our honey token file. All right. Here are some things that we really care about a record. I want to know who actually did this. I want to know when they did it. I specifically want to know what the IAM user or role that was used to do this, because I know the attacker has gained access. They're hitting my honey token. I need to go ask the question of how they got in, right? And then what else did they do? So what I can use JQ to print out all of this data. And I can see that there was user agent string of AWS CLI, which is what we're using. I can see the username is whatever my username is from my environment. I'll run this command so we can see it for me. Actually, I'm going to have two, I think, show up, because remember I had 2 CloudTrail logs. So everything's kind of double for me. My mistake. But yeah, here you can see that cybergroup, which is my handle, and the date and the time. The source IP address could be helpful, but in this case, it's not. That's actually a local IP address. This is actually Cloud Shell. So it's not telling me where they're originating from because of the way we run the lab. All right. So we now know that we've seen the data. I want to try and do this better. I know the data is there. I've tested it. I've got it. Okay. The next thing to do is to automate this response. I want to know exactly when this happens, immediately when it happens. And so that's what we're going to do here. So we have a couple of different options, and you might have your own favorite way of doing this. One of the things that we really want to try and do is detect this is happening using the standard logs. I don't really want to create a specific like SNS launch from the S3 bucket for that particular file, because if an attacker has gained access, they're going to see that and they may say, oh, that's a file that's being monitored. I want to look at it. So I just want to look at the data that I'm already getting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an event bridge rule. An event bridge rule is event bridge is the service that Amazon has that will react to an event. Okay. So an event could be something going to CloudWatch. It could be something from GuardDuty, which I think we mentioned earlier. In this case, I'm going to be looking at my CloudTrail logs that are being dropped. And I'm going to look for anything that relates to the word password.backup. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have, when that happens, the event bridge is going to notify Lambda. Lambda is a way in which I can run I can run different kinds of commands. I can run any kind of code in my AWS environment, usually to interact with other pieces of your AWS environment. And I'm going to run it. And then what it's going to do is going to grab the log and it's going to throw an alert to Security Hub. It's going to send an event to Security Hub that says, hey, this is something bad that is happening. I need to go and look at it. So that is going to be 20 minutes to build our automation. When we get done back for the 20 minutes, I'm going to close this out and talk a little bit about what we saw and kind of do a wrap up. So 20 minutes and then the wrap up. All right. See you then. All right. We are back. So just checking on chat. Couple things. There is a link to the eval. Please fill out the evals. It does help us understand what works, what doesn't, and tell us which workshop you would like to do, to do next. So that's great. There's some links in there for my contact information. LinkedIn is usually a better place. What's helpful is if you say, hey, I was at your workshop. That helps because then I know you're not trying to sell me something. Oh, and by the way, I don't buy anything for GitHub, so don't try and sell me anything. And also a link to our slides are going to come out in a couple of days, so you can go and see this if you want to do it later. Also, I asked everybody how they were doing, and no one responded. That makes me feel weird. Are you all making sure you all are here and that you're doing well? Because it was been kind of quiet the last run. So let me know if anybody hear me? Okay, you are hearing me. Okay, all right, great. So you're good. All right, so good. All right, glad to hear. Vincent pointed something out that I should have thought of. He said some things had been changed around in the source event pattern, but they'll figure it out. That's great. We are in the time of the year in which Amazon starts changing stuff because they're prepping for their big reinvent, which is in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. And they'll start changing stuff on the GUI. So just know that your GUI might have changes and some of the slides and stuff. But it looked like today was pretty good. So I'm not really sure what changes Vincent ran into, but I'm glad you figured it out. All right. So let's take a look at what we built. We created an event in CloudWatch. And I'm sorry, it's not CloudWatch anymore. It's the Event Bridge. It used to be called CloudWatch. And this particular, anyways, we won't go into the naming. We don't have time. But this is basically says, hey, when this activity happens, I want you to go do something. Now, when it says this activity is happening, it's using an event bus to be able to detect that. We don't have to do a lot to get built-in services into the event bus. CloudTrail goes into the event bus and we can go and look at it and it just has an alert on it. So it just is kind of built in automatically. I will be honest with you. I did not realize we could look for list objects, put objects, and that kind of stuff on the event bus till we started working out this lab. And we were like, oh, we can do it this way. We don't have to do it a different way, which is kind of nice. So the great thing is that I can have a bunch of stuff happening and then somebody else can build a detection and say, go and look for this and drop it in to the environment. So what we're looking for is we're looking for an AWS API call via CloudTrail. Just know that this text has to be exact. Okay. When you did this, there were some nice tools that let you do drop downs. Those were not always there. It used to be really painful to build these detections. But now it's a little bit easier because they give you some nice tooling. What we're doing is we're looking for an event, and in the event log, the JSON that we were just looking at is going to have an event source of S3 AWS Amazon AWS.com, an event name, and of the event name, I want one of these. Could be any of these. And then the request parameter is password backup.txt, the name of the file. Okay. So this is all data that we saw in our JSON queries in the previous exercise. And we're just using those to build this event pattern. Now, our target where we're going to send it to is this Lambda function. And we're going to say, hey, Lambda function, I want you to go and receive this. And so we go look at the Lambda function. And we can see visually on the Lambda function, it tells us how it's getting executed, which is nice. And we had a nice breakdown of the code. This is not a coding class, but just so you know that you can go and look at here and figure out, okay, what it's doing. First, all it has to do is it has to tear apart the JSON that was forwarded to it. So it's giving this JSON, it's wrapped up a little bit differently, but you kind of have to like know that. And then we can go and we can pull apart and look for specific things. And then we're going to send the data to a security hub. Now, then we executed the command, which was to list, and we can go and look at Security Hub. And in Security Hub, yes, I do have this finding. I've decided it's critical. I've determined that in the JSON. I have a title and I've got, some resources that happen on. So great. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to get a little bit detailed view. And I can see the account. I can see the information, whatever I send it to it from that JSON for that Lambda function, I have the ability to do it. Security findings wants to be kind of your issue management system where you can go and close this. I don't know anybody who does that. Most people have their own issue management system and they're making use of that. So they're just forwarding this data to that issue management system. Security Hub is fine. I'm not greatly in love with it, but one thing it can do really well is that it can gather up guard duty alerts, WAF alerts, AWS config alerts, custom alerts like we've seen here, all into a centralized location, and then you can forward it from there to your SIM or wherever it is you're doing your detection. So it is a good focal point before you send stuff. In AWS, there's stuff like happening all over all these different accounts, and you have to kind of like pull them together into a central location and then get them to your home base. That's typically what people do. And so Security Hub is a nice way of doing that. All right. So some takeaways from here. MITRE ATT&CK is a great place to go learn and understand about attacks. It's also a great way of having a communication with your folks. So if red team is doing an operation or your pen testers are doing an operation and they have stuff finding, they can link to the technique they used. And so people can go and look about it. It's really nice research. You need to understand the attack paths, what logs will catch some of that information. Sometimes you need multiple logs from multiple places. And where are those logs actually going to be located? You need an environment to do sample attacks. So typically, I recommend having your own account that's a security account or a detection account, something like that. Or in Azure, you would use, a different subscription, and you can focus your attack development and your log development there. So it's not in your production environment. Review your logs, make sure that your team understands not only what the logs are, but the infrastructure that generated it, and then build your detections and iterate. Think of those detections as production code. You don't want to just build and forget. You want to have a team that manages it continuously. All right. So if you enjoyed this workshop, it's very similar in feel. We don't have this as a particular lab, but it's very similar feel to our Security 541, which is the Cloud Security Attacker Techniques, Monitoring and Threat Detection. It's the Cloud Threat Detection class. I'm going to be teaching in Washington, D.C. in December 11th through the 15th. Come hang out with me in D.C. I'll be there live. You can also join Ryan, the co-author of this class, in January for Cloud Defender. He will be online for that. And then I will be in New Orleans in February, so you can come hang out with me there or do an online option for any of those. We're always online as well as in person. This is our flight plan. This describes the other cloud classes that we have and kind of where you are living. So if you are a security analyst or an engineer, you can kind of see the classes that map really well for you. Ryan, our co-author, wrote the 488 class, which is kind of like the intro cloud environment class. So that's a great one. If you're very new to the cloud, go and start with that 48. I highly recommend that. There is a webcast that's already available. You can go to sans.org/webcast that Ryan did, which is talking about this type of attack, but in Azure. And what's great is there's going to be a workshop coming up, and we had the links, I believe, in the in Discord for a workshop that is this workshop, but in Azure. So if you're in Azure or you interested in Azure, we can do something very similar in Azure. Go check out this webcast, which is like the precursor to it. And that is it for me. If there's any questions, I know we're beyond time, so I'll sit around on Discord for a good bit and answer any questions that you might have or just chat. Otherwise, thank you so much. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day.